Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian from Hertz Tribeca Trade Group, and it is September 9th, Wednesday, not Tuesday today. It is the second day of the week, though, and the theme of the day is Turnaround Wednesday, not Tuesday, because we did have the holiday this week. So today's the second day of the week. But yes, it did kind of feel like basically what we got is a nice oversold bounce today. And really, we'll see if this kind of is the beginning of a recovery, or if it's a little bit of like back and filling. And if you look at today's averages, I think you got a really nice bounce today with the Qs. They continued to move up. They rallied a little bit into the open. The overnight session was strong, and they continued to kind of add gains throughout the session. A little bit of an MOC again. I think it's been like 6 or 7 days of a sell imbalance for MOC that we saw in the last 5 minutes or so. But still, I think overall a pretty nice day for the bulls. And we'll look at some charts in a second, but you could see from today's performance, the gold miners were pretty strong today. They did see a little bit of call buying. GLD saw some calls as well, I think SLV. And that was one of your best performing groups of the day, 4.3%. But also you had things like, clean energy, which got walloped pretty hard about a few days ago, along with the solar ETF. That managed to recover 3.7%. So some of those momentum plays, strong groups, did pretty well today. And then the home builders, which were strong yesterday for most of the day, which we went over in yesterday's video. They were up about 1%, and then kind of fell when everything got sold off at the end of the day. But we're seeing some nice relative strength in the home builders. Should actually be helped a little bit by Restoration Hardware too. That reported after the close today, and some nice numbers up to basically 370, so up about 50 points. So that should be good for this group. I would watch this XHB tomorrow. You can see it's not moving. You could actually buy some if you like it after the close today, because I don't think this is an equally weighted ETF, so Restoration Hardware is not a big weight. But nevertheless, maybe this gets this group going a little bit. And again, like I said, kind of retaking some of those moving averages, right around that 20-day moving average. So this is kind of what you start to see with some groups, right? The leaders will retake some of those short-term moving averages. The moving averages that I have on my charts are the 200, that big thick white line in the middle, the 50-day moving average, the 20 exponential, and the 5. And what we want to see at this point is, for some things, some areas first, the nice relative strength areas, to outperform and take back some of those short-term moving averages. That generally happens one by one. And just to kind of round out the best performers too, the industrials were pretty strong today too, even though I don't see them on they were up 1.5%. I get the ETF is a little bit tough to read because Boeing is such a big portion of the industrials ETF. But again, software bounced today, even though Coupa was down overnight. Coupa Software was down overnight. So Breath, you could see on the bottom left of the screen, was pretty strong. So you kind of have to go back to, in these situations, Rome, the expression "Rome wasn't built in a day." But this is good progress, and we did not close back above these short-term moving averages, right? You could see that we touched them. You could also see that we closed right at the top of value. So, I wouldn't be surprised in a number of outcomes from here. Either we get a little bit of continuation and get back above here, or we do a little bit of back and filling. And I've talked a lot. Again, I'm not saying that this is June, but it just feels there was definitely some similarities that I have seen between this June run-up and what we saw in the end of August, beginning of September, where we basically got overbought and then we got thumped. So there was a little bit of this bouncing for a couple days, and notice we kind of went sideways for a little bit. So I still think that I would like to see us maybe bounce one more day, of course, of what I would like to see. I'll give you that. And then I'll give you, what I think is going to happen. And again, I don't know anything in terms of short term, but I'm just using a little bit of my instincts. I thought what was really nice today was Drunkenmiller was on CNBC, and he basically said, hey, I don't know what's going to happen in the short term, but he makes calculated trades and calculated bets. And, he always seems to resonate with me. I put a comment on Twitter and people were like, oh, well, he's not always right. Of course he's not always right. He does have a awesome track record, but nobody's going to be right all the time. It's so funny, like the Twitter crowd, the financial Twitter. Oh, well, he's not right all the time. Let me break it down to you. And I'm sorry, but no one's right all the time. So, just like with anything, with option flow, with, different people on CNBC, no matter what their track record is, no one is going to be right all the time. Traders are not, you're not going to be right as a trader all the time. It's just something to get used to. But you pull information from where you can, and it helps you, develop an overall view, right? So I just thought it was kind of funny because they're like, well, he's not always right. Well, of course he's not always right. Nobody's always right. And no one has a crystal ball either. So that's what I would like to see, is for price to kind of get back above these short-term moving averages, because I am more of a bull than anything else. And I think as well this 3398, which we've mentioned this a couple times in our weekend videos, that's the top of value. That's what we'll need to overtake. If you look at the 1 hour value, interesting that we did get into let's see, let me just wait for the charts to adjust. I think it needs to adjust one more. There we go, 3390. So that'll be the level to watch in kind of the overnight market and maybe tomorrow, right? I would like to see us stay inside value for the day. Again, big level. We talked about how that was basically support, and then it became resistance, and now it's support again. So a lot of consolidation around there. Notice again that we did take out this VPOC, and we just don't know which VPOC, virgin point of control, price action is going to stop at, but we did get a nice reversal on that. Now we don't have to worry about this one down here as long as we're inside value, right? So this is the value area for the week, and we need to stay above 3390, which is basically where we backed right into. NASDAQ is going to look a little bit different, right? So if we go back to the daily chart, we are a little bit deeper inside value because, of course, NASDAQ ran up a little bit further. So again, I wouldn't be surprised here if we do a little bit more sideways action, as long as we stay in value for the week. A lot of people were talking about the 50-day moving average too, which I've got on my charts. We got a bounce off of that. But again, really not too much going on here in terms of taking back much ground. Even though we had a big, up 3% day, just kind of shows you how much we're moving. Also notice that, we're not close to that resistance yet either, which is 285.20. All right, so keep that in mind for tomorrow, is that we're not up against resistance in the Qs. If you want to use a level to watch to the downside for short term, maybe watch this 275-ish, right? If we lose that, maybe we could come back and revisit, some levels down here. But as long as we're above 275, the bounce is still in play. IWM today was only up 1.5%. Again, didn't exactly run into resistance, and still below value, so still looking like a little bit, even though the move wasn't as dramatic to the downside for small caps, still from a technical standpoint looks the weakest. All right, so that's what you got going on in this. The VIX as well, VIX was down pretty decently today. Let's see if we can kind of find anything here. I would say watch that 200 period moving average. Again, this is kind of just playing out like a normal big, I don't want to say a big move in volatility, but so far it's playing out as normal, like these bouts of volatility, right? We usually get these spikes, and then it takes usually a few days. Sometimes, it could stay heightened for a little bit, and then we start to move down. So far, that's playing out a bit, right? And if we look at VXN, which we talked about, which had that bullish divergence yesterday where the VXN was down yesterday with the Qs down. That seems to play out pretty nicely. So we did get a bullish sign, and it's retesting that 38 level. You could see I've got a trend line drawn there. So again, Rome wasn't built in a day, and this is a starting place. Either we're going to continue to see a little bit more volatility, or things are going to kind of slowly move out, or who knows, we could see a further bounce tomorrow. All right, but I think that taking advantage of today's move, I'll go through some of the trades that I made today as usual. I always go, give you the blotter. None of this hypothetical stuff that people do on Twitter, like, oh yeah, did you see the setup I posted 5 days ago? Yeah, well, it's back. People don't trade like that, right? You can't post a setup from 5 days ago, and then it's, oh, all of a sudden, like, yeah, it's working really well. Do you have a trade on? No. But yeah, did you see the chart set up? So, you got to laugh at some of this stuff. These guys just make stuff up on Twitter, I swear. I don't think any of these guys are really trading. If they did, they would show you your P&L. They would show their P&L. It's one thing to be like, but anyway, I'll move on. I always get distracted by this stuff because I think it's kind of funny. The VVIX as well, the volatility of the VIX itself, no full breakdown either. This was only down 1.6%, so kind of interesting. So again, I think when we have these bouts of volatility, be patient a bit, right? Don't go for the home runs. I think the main message too, before I go into any of these charts, so much, rather than, I'll talk about a few setups like I talked about yesterday in yesterday's video too, but so much is how you're positioned and how disciplined you're being in this. It's more, I think it's more about that and versus, particular trade setups, right? The whole thing over the last week that you should be taking away from the last week is not chart setups, right? And technical setups, but basically, how you managed your risk. Right? Did you lose too much this week? Right? What did you do wrong because you lost too much? Were you overexposed at the wrong time? Right? Our goal always, for the most part, I'm generally playing this market to the long side, but really what I try to do is not lose that much money on the pullbacks, right? We're always going to get pullbacks. We know that the market doesn't always go up. So during the market pullbacks, if you can either play, hedge yourself a little bit and have some things to have some index puts to the, for a hedge, or just try to get out of some of your exposure so that the moves to the downside are not crippling to your portfolio and something, we're all going to lose some money on this. I have been very upfront, and I lost money yesterday. I lost some money on Thursday, and that's just part of the process, but my account's not blown out or anything like that. It's one of those things where, hey, I said even with this run up that I was going to give, once this thing breaks, I'm going to give some money back, because I've been, was riding the whole trend, for the last month or so. So, it's important to kind of realize this. It's important to plan things out. So that said, we will go over a couple chart setups, but really the risk, right? We've talked about this before, how you are managing your risk, how much exposure you have into the market is really a big part of the process of being a profitable trader. It's not just the chart setups. And again, I'm mainly holding, my bread and butter is swing trading. I do day trade more when the market's moving faster like this, and when we do have these bigger, these wider candles, right? There's more of a range. But for the most part, I am a swing trader, right? So you could see some of these trades that we did today. This Lulu trade didn't work out. I thought that their quarter was very good. I'm still in it. It blew through my stop, but that was my first trade of the day was bad. Zoom was a really nice trade today. This is one of those things where we do our homework. We post a whole bunch of trade setups for members pre-market, just things to kind of get you acquainted with some possible setups. And if you see call activity like we did, like in the first 5 minutes of the day, I went in and hopped on Zoom because it looked pretty good to me. I said as long as this thing basically stays above 362, and I'm not sure if we went over this in yesterday's video, but it looked really good to me in terms of that. And even when I entered this trade in the morning, it didn't move the right way initially. Like it did this, it actually came in and tested about 950. It actually did not take off till about 1010, and then it really went. All right, so this was a nice trade today. And again, this is one of those things where, because the market is extra, is more volatile than it was weeks ago, beginning of last week, the week before that, you could really kind of take advantage of, some day trades. So I got out of this at 390, paid 368. Also Amazon, which I mentioned that I did throw on a Amazon call spread yesterday morning. That worked out really well. Right, so I took a target at 840. Then I'm not going to be greedy, right, in this market. So I got out at 11 bucks. The call spread is $15 wide, so the most I can make is 15. But I got to hold it all the way till Friday's close. So I'm happy taking this off for 11 bucks, and then of course, kind of moving from there. And if you look at Amazon, I think that was the right thing to do. There's a little bit, further that this thing could get to before it hits some short-term resistance. Again, remember that I'm on the hourly chart, so it is short-term resistance. 3325. I'll give you another example of short-term resistance and how that kind of worked. For Nvidia, this was a name that I played yesterday. Hit resistance, so this was a nice day trade yesterday. Then, fell apart a bit, retested yesterday's low. I did not trade this one today. I kind of missed it. Instead, what I traded, I saw some calls and something I haven't seen in a while. This was SNPS, right? This is a name that had great earnings. So I'm still long this one. I'm holding on to this one. This is Synopsis. Remember Synopsis? We're seeing this in a lot of names, by the way, right? This had great earnings, rallied from 205 to 230, and then of course with this volatility came back, filled the earnings gap, so came back into there. So I like this spot, right? We know that they had good earnings, and they came back and retested really nicely. So I'm looking right now to basically just play this to 211, right? And that's the top of resistance. Maybe I hold on to the last portion, but I think there were some March calls that went up. Let me see if I can find that for you. All right, so this was this trade at 10 o'clock this morning. Nice $300,000 trade, that went up. This was an opening trade going all the way out to March, right? So what did I do? Because I know that the options are difficult. Again, I'm trading more stock in this environment because of the higher volatility, right? So that was a name. I took a little bit of targets too because I didn't know that we were going to get a full-on bounce for the day. All right, NSC was another one where we saw some call activity today, right? And I love call activity in, here, I'll show you trade alert for this one. The other one was Cheddar Flow that I showed you. But I love call activity in the rails, right? So we saw a little bit of this going out to June. And then there was some news on the tape, so I was able to take some profits. Again, no reason to be super greedy right now, right? So what I generally like to do, sometimes people ask me, well, they're like, is this a day trade or is it a swing trade? Well, if I could take a couple targets like I did in NSC today, I'm in December calls, took target 12 bucks, paid 10.25. Now I feel a little bit more comfortable holding a swing trade, especially in this environment, especially with options. Docu did not work. I got out of that trade, stopped out of that trade. Beyond worked pretty well. I took off this trade because the implied volatility is too hard, right? But I'll be watching this name for tomorrow. Nice, you could maybe draw a trend line in here too if you want to, right? But this thing is back above value, and And you could use a stop basically about 137, right? So that's a name I'll be watching for tomorrow. Sold the short-term calls, got out of them at the end of the day. I think I hit one target for $6. GRWG. I know a lot of people like this little momentum name. It's got to get. It has to stay in value for this to trigger this. That's 1462. I think it closed right around there, but you could see that this thing has spent some time consolidating here. A couple hammer bars, low volume day yesterday, and back above these short-term moving averages. So I think this is worth a shot, and I did take a shot on this. So I'm holding that one as well. What else? And that's basically it. Just, making sure as well when you get to the end of the day that you are taking some targets. Crowd was a name that I put on back on Friday and had not taken a target in it. This thing hasn't really moved that much, but I just figured, takes a little bit of profits in some things. Get yourself to where you want. I'm talking to myself, but when I say you, but getting myself to where I want to be with risk, and then live to fight for another day, right? And, have some risk on for the next day, have a couple trades on, and have plenty of a cash cushion right now. As I was going through some of those charts earlier, I think it's too early to kind of conclude that we're out of the woods. All right, so that's it, guys. I'll leave it there for the day, and look forward to trading with you guys tomorrow. Have a great night, everybody. Football starts tomorrow, and we go from there. Good night, guys.